In the end, one battle turned a legendary king into a story the world still argues about. This is the account of a ruler who reshaped an entire region, who traded fear for law, and who rode to war when his empire demanded it. He had built cities, reformed taxes, and welcomed the vanquished into civic life rather than burning them into rubble. Yet the last campaign of his life unfolded not on the broad plains of victory, but on a frontier where tribes met empire in a clash of worlds. The ruler was old by the standards of his day, but age for him meant experience rather than weakness. He put on his armor once more, mounted his horse, and led his men toward a river that would decide more than borders. Across that river lived fierce horse peoples whose ways the sedentary world found both alien and dangerous. Some sources say he tried to secure peace by marriage and diplomacy. Others say pride drove him toward conflict. How do kings balance magnanimity with the need to stop raids and lawlessness? He ordered boats and towers to support the crossing, preparing as if engineering could substitute for brute force. Opponents sent a message proposing a truce and a field of battle 3 days from the water, a test of wills and tactics. His closest counselors argued the merits of withdrawal or entrapment. One older advisor suggested an ambush that would win glory. He listened, weighed honor against prudence, and then acted on a plan that mixed guile with force. In a staged retreat, he left a camp lightly held, piled high with spoils, then slipped away with his main host into hiding. The plunder proved irresistible when enemy horsemen discovered a treasure-laden camp, and they charged in, hungry and curious, feasting on unfamiliar riches and drinking wine they had never tasted. Their discipline crumbled into indulgence. That moment was the hinge. When an army trades vigilance for celebration, the balance shifts in an instant. At a chosen signal, the hidden forces struck, turning surprise into slaughter and seizing prisoners from the stunned horsemen. Among the captive was the commander's own son, a blow that would bend a mother's heart toward fury. The general released the captive, perhaps out of mercy or political calculation, and the consequence was immediate and tragic. Shame and despair drove the son to take his life, and word of that death swept back like wildfire. Now the matter was personal. What had been a frontier dispute became a vendetta that gathered momentum. The furious queen mustered her people and confronted the imperial host with a terrible purpose. Armies formed and archery began. Both sides loosed volleys until the range emptied and steel met steel. They fought with such ferocity that the field became a tide of death, with neither side willing to yield. Honor becomes the cruelest kind of debt. Some ancient accounts say the king fell amid the melee, cut down by a spear or swallowed by the mass of bodies. Others offer a different ending. A wounding in distant lands that bled slowly into death, a dignified farewell in a tent rather than on the ground. Yet every version agrees on one truth. His last days were not peaceful retirement but violent culmination. The new narratives we tell cannot erase that tension between the public accomplishments and the private end. After the fighting, his sons carried his body home and placed him in the tomb he had built facing the rising sun. His reign had lasted decades. From small origins, he had created an empire where law replaced terror. Historians still debate exact motives and details because the surviving writers preserved memory through their own lenses. Some chroniclers favored dramatic scenes and moral lessons, others offered courtly eulogies, and a few sought to extract practical lessons for rulers. What does victory mean when the price is a king's life and a shattered army? The answer depends on who writes the history and what they wish to teach the next generation. Yet the immediate aftermath mattered. Succession, the security of provinces, and the delicate handling of rival claimants. The appointed heir was sent with authority to ensure continuity and to prevent opportunists from tearing the realm apart. Stories from other sources tell of campaigns in remote valleys where war elephants and ambushes turned the battlefield into chaos. A terrified mount, a heavy blow in the press of men, and the wound that would not heal. These are details that make deaths human and messy. Survivors wrapped him in cloth, carried him under a hastily raised canopy, and gathered his sons for final counsel. He spoke to them about humility, justice, and the responsibilities that come with command, a last lecture worthy of a founder. Then he died, and the empire he had assembled had to prove it could stand without his guiding hand. The ruler's policies had created unexpected allies among conquered peoples. Temples were restored, local leaders kept their posts, and displaced captives returned home. He believed inclusion would stabilize his world, and this philosophy altered how future rulers approached conquest. Yet political stability is always fragile when power flows through human hearts and ambitions. As news of his death spread, distant governors and satraps measured their loyalty against their own interests. Some held fast, others betrayed, and a few simply waited to see which way the wind would blow. Empires survive on institutions, not legends. Which account is truer, the heroic battlefield fall, or the wounded king who spoke his last words to his children? We do not have a definitive forensic report. We have fragments of memoirs, speeches, and sometimes propaganda. But there is value in each telling because each reveals what later societies prized: courage, clemency, or cunning. The ambiguity itself became part of the ruler's legacy, allowing poets and generals to claim his mantle for different ends. In the decades that followed, his name became shorthand for a new approach to governance, one that prized law and mercy. That reputation helped bind an empire of many peoples under a single, softer idea of rule. Yet tragedy and myth often travel together. A dramatic death helped the story spread and gave it moral weight. Public rituals, a solemn burial, and inscriptions on stone reinforced the memory and created a foundation for legitimacy. Graves and monuments served as places where the living could project hopes and fears onto the departed hero. Rivals learned too. Attacking a system built on inclusion required more than force, it required undermining consent. At home, the sons and successors faced the hard work of balancing military needs with civil administration. Modern scholars sift through clay tablets, royal inscriptions, and foreign accounts to separate likely events from embellishment. No system of memory is neutral. Records reflect the priorities and prejudices of their creators. Yet even with fragmentary evidence, a clear outline emerges. A ruler who transformed empire building and whose end still sparks debate. Every age rewrites such stories to suit its present, but the raw facts about campaigns, logistics, and political choices remain crucial. Archaeology has added details, roads, fortresses, and decrees that confirm the scale of the changes he instituted. The lessons resonate today. Leadership is a mix of vision, force, and mercy, and the balance between them can decide survival. How much should a ruler risk personally for the sake of prestige or security? That question echoes from those ancient banks to modern halls of power. After all, the cost of prestige sometimes becomes a wound that fortune cannot heal. In the end, the man is both greater than his death and defined by it. His policies reshaped lives, but his final campaign became the pivot of legend. Communities he had protected mourned, rivals recalculated, and his successors inherited a world remade by his choices. A single campaign could destroy an army, crown a successor, and create a legend that lasts millennia. Before we close, remember the paradox. A king who freed captives and honored temples could still die because of a battlefield misstep. The full story resists tidy morals, inviting us instead to weigh complexity over simple answers. History rewards nuance. If we learn to look for it, we see more than the spectacle of war. Now, a few lines cut clear enough to share and remember: mercy outlives the sword. Leadership is tested in endings. Like any good story, this one leaves us with as many questions as answers, and that is its power. Thanks for watching. If you found value here, please like and subscribe to Winds of Thought for more histories told sharply and fairly. Tell us in the comments which version you prefer: the battlefield fall or a dignified death. A closer look at the battlefield shows logistics matter as much as courage. Supply lines, scouts, and local intelligence shaped every move. Armies of the ancient world were not just bands of fighters. They were moving cities that needed food, fodder, and orders transmitted over long distances. Engineers who built river crossings and siege works often decided campaigns before swords were drawn. That is why leaders who mastered administration could outlast those who relied solely on charisma. After his death, administrators and satraps convened to secure tax rolls, grain reserves, and troop penny allocations to prevent famine and revolt. Those dry details sound mundane next to heroic tales, but they were the real backbone of empires. Meanwhile, poets and orators purified the story into memorable episodes. A bold crossing, a treacherous feast, a mother's revenge, a king fallen. Why do humans prefer tidy narratives of heroes and villains to the messier truth of supply lines and legal reforms? Because stories require faces and names to carry morals and emotions across generations. Still, if you lift the flimsy curtain of myth, you find policies that mattered. Decrees protecting worship, laws standardizing tribute, and incentives for local cooperation. Those measures turned a raiding problem into an opportunity for integration, even if temporarily interrupted by violence. Consider the Queen's perspective. A warrior society defending honor and autonomy against an expanding state. To them, alliances and bloodlines mattered as much as halls of administration did to the imperial center. Conflict is often the result of two systems with different priorities colliding at the margins. When we reconstruct events, we must account for bias. Court historians flavored accounts to flatter patrons, while opposing chroniclers emphasized brutality. Modern methods attempt to triangulate truth through material culture, comparative texts, and, increasingly, forensic science. Even then, some mysteries remain. Where exactly was that battlefield? Which units survived? Who among the elite deserted and who stayed loyal? Answers emerge slowly as archaeologists uncover camp ovens, arrowheads, and inscription fragments from dusty strata. But even incomplete answers change our understanding of strategy and consequence. Take succession. An empire with clear institutions and delegated authority could survive a founder's violent death better than one reliant on personality. That explains why some empires persevered and others splintered into successor states. Rituals after death mattered too. Public mourning, oaths of fealty, and ceremonial burials helped stabilize transitions. By honoring the dead in stone and ceremony, successors could claim continuity and the gods' favor. Sometimes these acts were sincere. Sometimes they were convenient political theater. In either case, they shaped how later generations remembered the past and taught rulers how to claim legitimacy. Centuries later, historians and leaders read those memorials as manuals for power. Could a modern leader learn anything from that ancient balance of mercy and might? Possibly. Governance that relies on goodwill must still prepare for the inevitability of force. Conversely, relentless force without legitimacy tends to fragment in time. In classrooms and documentaries, we will keep retelling this story because it offers a compact lesson about statecraft. Build institutions, respect local customs, and accept that risk accompanies glory. The image of a founder dying at the front lends drama to what was otherwise a complex process of building roads, tax systems, and legal norms. It reminds us that human ambition touches both creation and catastrophe. Finally, remember those short, shareable lines. Simple enough to carry forward. Mercy outlives the sword. Leadership is tested in endings. These phrases can anchor discussion, but they are only entry points to deeper inquiry. If you enjoyed this deep dive, hit like and subscribe to Winds of Thought, and share which version of the end you believe in the comments below. Which detail surprised you most about leadership in antiquity? Leave a line and start a conversation.